what made you decide to get into real estate?
That's actually a funny story. I was guy I worked with in the Navy. We traveled around Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia doing workouts for some of our spec war candidates. And his family wanted to say they owned a title company or something out in Dayton. We just were always talking about it. And there's a few parts of this, but he was like, "Man, we're done by 1:00 every day because we're up at 3 or 4 in the morning on the road." And I was like, "I know." So we ended up. He was talking about getting his real estate license. I was like, that's not a bad idea. So I thought about it a little bit, and then I was lucky. One of my best friends, and still argue to this day, my best friend, he was married to a real estate agent, Laura Listaberger. She does very well in real estate. I've known her for probably going on almost 20 years, it feels like. So I reached out to her and just kind of got her advice on it. And she was able to share a lot of the pros and cons and what she really enjoyed about it versus what she didn't enjoy about it, how it kind of fit into her lifestyle and just all those things. We took all that into account. And then I talked to my wife and just made the decision, you know what, get my license. The Navy pays for me to go to school. So I'm one of the few people that didn't go to Hondros. I got my license through Columbus State because the Navy would pay them, but not Hondros for some reason.
Interesting.
So I did that. And then, I looked at it as it was just extra income. Maybe if I sold a house a year, that pays for vacation,
Yeah. Yeah. And what, when you got in, how long were you doing Navy and real estate?
So I got my license, I'm wanting to say it was March or February of 2019.
Okay.
So from 19 to I got out, I retired April of 21. So roughly 2 years, I was kind of doing both.
Any real supporters, doubters when you kind of were, and I guess probably when you got your license, you probably really weren't thinking career change.
No, not at the time for sure. For me, it was more of a, you never know what's happening with the military. Even if I wouldn't have got retired, I didn't know if I was staying in. I did my 10 years because I wanted to pass my GI Bill to my kids. So that's all done. So at that point, I didn't really have nothing holding me to the Navy anymore. Everything I wanted out of the Navy, I got, so I wanted to have something that would kind of be a buffer, I guess you could say, and an easy transition to where once I did find what I want to do, I still had some little bit of income coming in, or at least put some back to kind of help with that transition. And then, I tell everyone I got really lucky. I'm from the area, so I have a lot of referrals, centers, COI, center of influence. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing that helped me was I built a new home in 2016 when I got here. And that neighborhood, I made everyone there. They're all building new homes there. Everyone that decided to leave, most of them that knew I did real estate, they used me because I was in the neighborhood. So that was if I didn't have that, there's no way anything else kind of goes in the same direction as it did.
So you're a neighborhood guy, huh?
I was.
You actually talk to neighbors and stuff?
A little bit, yeah. Kids, kids are always out and about, so you end up running into everybody, and you walk your dog, and you have to talk and be nice whether you really want to or not, right?
Yeah, people are always like, I'm like, I don't really like talking to my neighbors, even though I do real estate. I don't really like talking to the neighbors, No.
Luckily, it was people that weren't my actual neighbors. They're all throughout the community. So
Sure. So you get licensed in 2019. Instant success, struggles. Kind of walk me through kind of the first couple of years.
I would say that the first year was kind of what most people told me would be, you hit a little hot zone for a second during summer, right?
Yeah.
I was lucky because being stationed here in Ohio, working with the Navy Command, there's people coming in and out every 3 years, right? People are rotating. So I had a few listings immediately from guys I worked with, which kind of helped me out. And then a few people moving in, they referred them to me. So I had just almost the relocation thing going on with the military. So the first year I was more than happy with how I did, especially considering I thought it was going to be a part-time, hopefully sell 1 or 2 houses a year gig.
Right.
And then second year, same thing, a little slower during the winter, January through March. And then, as you know, March of basically 2020, everything started getting a little bit different.
Right.
yeah, it just took off from there.
Oh, that's awesome. And you really just have focused on just your sphere of influence, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Basically just talking with people, literally, using everything I had to learn in the Navy for recruiting. They teach you all about sales and all this stuff, which I hated being that sales guy. I didn't want to be that guy. I
Sure.
always just felt like if you be you and talk with people, they're either going to enjoy being around you and use you, or they're not. And I'm like, all right, this guy, it is what it is.
So those agents that are coming in and really wanting to tap into it, to their center of influence or sphere of influence, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, like you said, you're from here. You were in the Navy for just over a decade, so you had some of those contacts as well. But for those that are looking to really focus on that sphere of influence and building their business, what are some of the takeaways that you had when you got started?
I would say you got to understand that just because know different people and stuff, you got to remember you're not the only realtor, right? So don't ever take anything to heart if they use someone else, because you're going to end up being unhappy, and you're going to use that as a way to try to sell someone else when that's not what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
You want to just be you and genuine with people, and understand that you're not always going to be the agent they use. I've seen too many times where you got these stories of, oh man, they sent me this hate email or messaged me on Facebook. Really? That's crazy to me to think of. So it's, at the end of the day, just, talk to people, but understand that, you're not going to list every house that your friend owns. You're not going to be the buying agent every time a buyer, one of your friends own.
Yeah, I bet you probably took a lot away from the recruiting part, in regards to that mindset, from the
Yeah,
Navy.
it did. It definitely helped. I think the biggest thing it helped me was just being able to talk to people. Being they always said be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? That was
Yeah.
always one thing, because I had to talk in front of classrooms every day. So it's like, oh gosh, I got 30 kids looking at me, a teacher back there that really probably didn't want me there to begin with. So you just end up having fun with it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I always tell people, turn it into a game. Real
mhm.
estate, it's just a contact sport, right? And you're going to get way more no's than yeses. So,
Yeah.
fall in love with the process. Understand that business and sales is just math, and
Mhm.
the rest will take care of itself.
Yep.
Marco, when did you decide to get your lending license, and how did that come about?
So as a real estate agent, obviously I worked with different lenders. One in particular always had really good success with, as far as, he was just very good communicating. Met him through a family friend, or through my wife's cousin. I met him through there. And when I found out I might be getting out of the Navy, I'm a guy that needs to stay busy. If I'm not busy, then I end up finding myself just doing things I probably don't need to be doing, right? Going to Roosters at noon on a Wednesday, staying there too long. So, so I was talking to him, and I asked him just how he liked lending or whatever. And at the time, I didn't know you could have both licenses. I was just talking one day, and
Yeah.
he was like, "Why don't you get your license and make that your new day job, like the Navy was?" And I was like, "Is that even allowed?" And
Yeah.
he's like, "Yeah, he's obviously, there's rules to it, certain things, guidelines that has to happen." So I looked into it and saw that it was just like real estate. You do a few courses. Those courses are really just a filler, right, to get the checks.
Yeah.
But then you actually have to study and learn everything before the test. So I just did that, and kind of replaced the Navy, I guess. The morning hours I always did with them with lending. And I'd go to his house every morning around 7 or 8 a.m. and he would just teach me. Because there's one thing knowing the different stuff, but actually applying it into the system,
Sure.
learning how to put it in correctly, and then just learning to meet those timelines. And I think actually being a realtor helped me on that, because as realtors, we know how important it is to get that communication from the lender.
Right.
Because you always got another agent calling you saying, "Hey, what's the status?" "Oh, I don't know. Let me check with them." Right. Like, so you kind of take that and understand the things we really like as realtors and the things we really dislike as
Yeah.
realtors when it comes to that process. And I was kind of able to apply those things. So, communication obviously is huge, right? But then not only knowing the deadlines, but explaining why we have the deadlines of what they are. So that way everyone's not just guessing, like waiting to hear, "Hey, what's up with everything?"
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm sure it's helped both ways,
Mhm.
understanding the real estate side and then now understanding the lending side because I think you just can't work with the same client on the same deal, right? You can't do the financing and
Yeah,
the agent
so
side.
I guess by the rules, unless anything's changed in the last few months, you could technically do conventional if you wanted to, as
Okay.
long as it's disclosed. Most lenders, the actual business won't let you, right? So I don't really do that. I will explain to people I need to disclose if I am licensed, but if it's if it's on the lending side, tell them I don't want to be asked any real estate questions.
Yeah.
You have a realtor for that. So it's just setting those boundaries at the beginning, because at the end of the day, we all know this business is relied upon on referrals and
Yeah.
your past work, right? So last thing you ever want to do is cause an issue with any deal because of the different license and stuff like that. So
Yeah. When did you decide to get into the financing side?
so since I was being separated in April of 21, I got my license in February of 21.
Okay. And just kind of built it the same way through your sphere of influence?
Mhm.
All right. No, that's awesome. Like I said, I mean, I think you're the only person that I know that carries both, you
I
know.
know there's a few people out there, but I'm not exactly sure. I personally don't know them, but I've heard through different brokers that, when you're going through the process and everything,
Yeah.
they share their experiences and, whatever they can sell to you and all that stuff and go from there.
Long term, you plan on just continuing doing both?
That's a great question. It probably changes daily. Uh, because both have their pros and cons, right? Real
Yeah.
estate, I love that I can do it when I want, right? As far as hours, I love that I can kind of make time to do what I need to with the kids and wife and all that. And on the lending side, I love that I can sit here in my office, right? Like I'm not going out too far. So both have the pros and cons, but real estate, there's stressful times, but lending sometimes they're stressful every day, just because there's a timeline. Everyone has to be working in sync to get it done on time. And if the one person's not, well, then you're sitting there trying to figure out why it's not moving, in the right direction. And you don't ever want to be the reason for the deal not to close on time,
Yeah.
right? Because if it doesn't, it's not going to be the underwriter. It's not going to be the processor. It's not going to be the buyer that didn't send the docs in, right? It's going to be you. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
so
I like that. Real estate sometimes there's stressful times, and in lending sometimes there's stressful every days.
every day, if you're working on a deal, usually there's some stress involved.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.